Imagine being 16 years old, walking into a courtroom, every eye on you, judging you, waiting for you to crumble. Your heart's pounding, your palms are sweaty, and the weight of years of pain sits heavy on your chest. That's where Marcus Jackson found himself one fateful day. A black teenager who'd been pushed to the edge by bullies, by whispers, by a world that told him he'd never be enough. But what happened in that courtroom? It silenced everyone, and changed Marcus forever. This is his story, a story of fear, courage, and finding your voice when the world tries to take it away. Marcus Jackson was no stranger to feeling small. Growing up in a small town in Ohio, he lived in a modest house with his mom, Tanya, and his little sister, Aaliyah. Tanya worked double shifts at the local diner, her hands rough from years of scrubbing plates, but her smile was always warm for her kids. Marcus loved his family, but school? School was a battlefield. At Lincoln High, Marcus was the quiet kid who kept his head down, his hoodie up, and his dreams tucked away. He was tall for his age, lanky, with deep brown eyes that seemed to carry a story he wasn't ready to tell. But to his classmates, he was a target. They called him Shadow because he was always alone, fading into the background. The bullying started small, snickers in the hallway, cruel notes stuffed in his locker. But by sophomore year, it got worse. Jake Carter, the school's golden boy and star of the basketball team, led the pack. Jake was everything Marcus wasn't: confident, popular, and untouchable. With his crew of followers, Jake made Marcus's life a nightmare. They'd trip him in the cafeteria, mock his worn-out sneakers, and spread rumors that Marcus was weird or trouble. One day, during gym class, Jake shoved Marcus into the bleachers, laughing as the other kids joined in. "Stay down, Shadow," Jake sneered. Marcus didn't fight back. He never did. He just picked himself up, dusted off his pride, and walked away. But inside, Marcus was breaking. At night, he'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering why he was never enough. Why his skin, his voice, his very existence seemed to invite hate. He stopped drawing, something he used to love, his sketchbook gathering dust under his bed. He stopped smiling. And worst of all, he started believing the lies, that he was worthless, that he didn't belong. One chilly October morning, things went too far. Marcus was walking to school, his backpack heavy with books, when Jake and his crew ambushed him behind the bleachers. They surrounded him, their laughter sharp like knives. Jake grabbed Marcus's backpack, dumped his books into a puddle, and shoved him to the ground. "You're nothing, Shadow," Jake spat. "Nobody cares about you." Marcus's knees stung from the gravel, but the words hurt worse. He wanted to scream, to fight back, but fear glued his lips shut. As Jake and his crew walked away, Marcus sat there, rain soaking his clothes, feeling like the world had finally won. That night, Tanya noticed the bruises on Marcus's arms. "Baby, what happened?" she asked, her voice trembling. Marcus shrugged, avoiding her eyes. "It's nothing, Mom." But Tanya wasn't fooled. She pulled him into a hug, her voice fierce. "You are enough, Marcus. Don't let anyone tell you different." Her words sparked something in Marcus, a tiny flicker of hope. But it wasn't enough to stop the storm brewing inside him. He was tired of being afraid, tired of hiding. He didn't know how, but he knew something had to change. The next day, Marcus met someone who would change everything. Miss Harper, the school's new guidance counselor, was a no-nonsense woman with a kind smile and a knack for seeing through walls kids put up. During a mandatory check-in, she noticed Marcus's slumped shoulders and quiet answers. "What's going on, Marcus?" she asked gently. At first, Marcus stayed silent. But Miss Harper didn't push. She just waited, her eyes steady and warm. Finally, Marcus spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm tired of being invisible." Miss Harper leaned forward. "You're not invisible, Marcus. You're just waiting to be seen. And I see you." Over the next few weeks, Miss Harper became Marcus's lifeline. She encouraged him to journal his thoughts, to draw again, to let out the pain he'd buried. She told him about her own struggles growing up, how she'd been judged for being too loud or too different. "The world will try to dim your light," she said. "But you decide how bright you shine." With Miss Harper's help, Marcus started to find his voice. He began sketching again, filling his notebook with images of heroes who looked like him, strong, proud, unbroken. He wrote about his fears, his anger, his dreams. And slowly, he started to believe he could be more than Shadow. One day, Ms. Harper handed Marcus a flyer for a local youth leadership program. It was a chance to speak at a community event about issues facing teens. "You've got a story, Marcus," she said. "Maybe it's time to tell it." Marcus hesitated. Speak in public? In front of strangers? The thought made his stomach twist. But then he remembered Jake's words, "Nobody cares about you." And he thought of his mom, working late nights to give him a better life. He thought of Aaliyah, who looked up to him. And he thought of himself, the boy he wanted to become. "I'll do it," Marcus said, his voice shaking but determined. The program required Marcus to present his story in front of a panel, including local leaders and even a judge. It was a big deal, and the thought of standing in a courtroom-like setting terrified him. But Ms. Harper promised to help him prepare. Together, they worked on his speech, crafting words that were raw, honest, and powerful. Marcus poured his heart into it, writing about the bullying, the pain, and the strength he was starting to find. The day of the event arrived. Marcus stood outside the community center, his palms sweaty, his heart racing. The room was set up like a courtroom, with a long table for the panel and rows of chairs for the audience. Kids from other schools, parents, and community members filled the seats. Jake and his crew were there too, smirking in the back row. Marcus felt like he might bolt. But then he saw Ms. Harper in the crowd, giving him a nod. He saw his mom, her eyes shining with pride. And he saw Aaliyah, clutching a drawing she'd made of him as a superhero. Taking a deep breath, Marcus stepped to the podium. The room went quiet, every eye on him. He could feel Jake stare, hear the whispers of shadow in his mind. But this time, he didn't shrink. He stood tall, his voice steady as he began. "My name is Marcus Jackson. For years, I let people tell me who I was. They called me worthless. They made me feel small. But I'm here to tell you, and to tell myself, that I am enough." As Marcus spoke, his words filled the room with raw emotion. He talked about the bullying, the nights he cried himself to sleep, the fear that had chained him. But he also talked about hope, about finding his strength, about refusing to let hate define him. His voice grew stronger with every word, his eyes locking with the audience, daring them to see him. When he finished, the room was silent. Not a whisper, not a cough. Even Jake's smirk was gone, replaced by something Marcus couldn't quite read. Then, slowly, the audience began to clap. It started with Ms. Harper, then Tanya, then Aaliyah, until the whole room erupted in applause. Marcus stood there, tears in his eyes, feeling something new, pride. For the first time, he wasn't shadow. He was Marcus Jackson, and he was enough. The applause from the community center still echoed in Marcus Jackson's ears as he walked home with his mom, Tanya, and little sister, Aaliyah. The chilly Ohio evening felt lighter somehow, like the weight on Marcus's chest had lifted, even if just a little. Tanya squeezed his shoulder, her voice soft but proud. "You were incredible up there, Marcus. I always knew you had it in you." Aaliyah bounced beside him, waving the superhero drawing she'd made. "You're my hero, Marcus." But Marcus wasn't so sure. Standing at that podium, telling his story, had felt like stepping into a new version of himself, one who wasn't afraid, one who could be seen. Yet, as the high of the moment faded, doubt crept in. What if nothing changed? What if Jake Carter and his crew just laughed it off? What if he was still shadow at school tomorrow? At home, Marcus sat on his bed, his sketchbook open in his lap. He hadn't drawn in weeks, but tonight, his pencil moved almost on its own. He sketched a figure, a boy with his head held high, standing in a spotlight, unshaken by the shadows around him. It was him, or at least the him he wanted to be. For the first time in a long time, Marcus smiled. Monday morning brought Marcus back to Lincoln High, and with it, the familiar knot in his stomach. The hallways buzzed with the usual chatter, but something was different. Kids glanced at him as he passed, some whispering, others offering small nods. A girl from his math class, Lena, caught his eye and said, "Hey, I heard about your speech. That was kinda cool." Marcus mumbled a thanks, his cheeks warm. But not everyone was impressed. At lunch, Jake Carter and his crew blocked Marcus's path to the cafeteria tables. Jake's smirk was back, sharper than ever. "So, Shadow thinks he's a big shot now, huh?" he said, his voice loud enough for the whole room to hear. His friends snickered, egging him on. "What, you think one little speech makes you somebody? You're still nothing." Marcus's heart raced, the old fear clawing at him. He wanted to shrink, to disappear like he always had. But then he remembered Ms. Harper's words, "You decide how bright you shine." He took a deep breath, meeting Jake's gaze. "I'm not nothing," he said quietly, but firmly. "And I'm done letting you decide who I am." The cafeteria went quiet, kids turning to watch. Jake's smirk faltered for a split second, but he recovered quickly, stepping closer. "You're gonna regret that, Shadow." He shoved Marcus's tray, sending his lunch crashing to the floor. Laughter erupted from Jake's crew, but Marcus didn't flinch. He picked up his tray, walked away, and sat alone at a corner table. Inside, though, he was shaking, not just with fear, but with something new. Defiance. That afternoon, Marcus had art class, one of the few places he felt safe. His teacher, Mr. Ruiz, was a laid-back guy with a knack for spotting talent. He'd noticed Marcus's sketches before but never pushed him to share. Today, though, Mr. Ruiz stopped by Marcus's desk, eyeing the half-finished drawing of the boy in the spotlight. "This is powerful, Marcus," he said. "You've got a gift. Ever thought about entering the district art contest?" Marcus shook his head, embarrassed. "It's just doodling." "It's more than that," Mr. Ruiz said. "Your work tells a story. The contest is next month, and the theme is courage. I think you've got something to say." The idea stuck with Marcus. That night, he pulled out his sketchbook and started working on a new piece. It was bold, a black teenager standing on a cracked stage, surrounded by faceless bullies, but with light bursting from his chest, pushing the darkness away. Every stroke of his pencil felt like a release, like he was pouring his pain and his hope onto the page. Ms. Harper noticed the change in Marcus during their next meeting. "You seem different," she said, her eyes twinkling. "What's going on?" Marcus hesitated, then showed her the drawing. "I'm entering an art contest," he said, his voice shy but proud. "It's about me. About not giving up." Ms. Harper's smile was wide. "That's your voice, Marcus. Keep using it." Jake's escalation. But Jake wasn't done with Marcus. Over the next week, the bullying got worse. Jake and his crew followed Marcus after school, taunting him, throwing pebbles at his backpack. One day, they cornered him in the parking lot, Jake's voice low and menacing. "You think you're better than me now? You're still the same loser, Shadow." Marcus's hands clenched into fists, but he didn't swing. Instead, he looked Jake in the eye. "Why do you hate me so much?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear in his gut. Jake froze, caught off guard. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, something like pain. But then he laughed it off, shoving Marcus against a car. "Keep talking, and you'll see what happens." As Jake walked away, Marcus noticed something strange. Jake's shoulders were slumped, his usual swagger missing. It was the first time Marcus wondered if Jake was hiding something, too. The next day, Marcus saw Jake in a way he never expected. During a school assembly, Jake was called to the stage to accept an award for basketball. He grinned for the crowd, but Marcus, sitting near the front, caught a different moment. As Jake stepped off the stage, his dad, a tall man with a stern face, grabbed his arm, whispering something harsh. Jake's smile vanished, his eyes downcast. Later, in the hallway, Marcus overheard Jake's dad on the phone. "He's gotta be the best, or he's nothing. I didn't raise a loser." The words hit Marcus hard. They sounded too familiar, like the lies he'd told himself for years. For the first time, Marcus saw Jake not as a bully, but as a kid carrying his own weight. That night, Marcus added a new element to his contest drawing, a second figure in the shadows, watching the boy in the spotlight. It wasn't Jake, not exactly, but it carried the same pain Marcus had seen in his eyes. The drawing was becoming more than just Marcus's story. It was about everyone who felt trapped by fear. With the art contest looming, Marcus threw himself into his work. He stayed late at school, perfecting every detail of his piece. Mr. Ruiz offered pointers, but mostly, he let Marcus lead. "This is yours," he said. "Make it sing." Ms. Harper helped, too, encouraging Marcus to write a short statement to go with the drawing. "Explain why this matters to you," she said. Marcus wrote about his journey, how he'd felt invisible, how he'd found his voice, and how he was still learning to stand tall. The words flowed easily, each one a step toward healing. But the closer the contest got, the more Marcus's nerves grew. The event would be public, with judges, students, and parents watching. Jake would probably be there, ready to mock him. And what if his drawing wasn't good enough? What if he froze again? Tanya noticed his worry one evening as they washed dishes together. "You're scared, aren't you?" she asked. Marcus nodded, staring at the soapy water. "What if I mess up, Mom? What if they laugh?" Tanya dried her hands and turned to him, her eyes fierce. "Let them laugh. You're not doing this for them. You're doing it for you, for the boy who's stronger than he knows." Her words stayed with Marcus, grounding him. He wasn't just entering a contest. He was fighting for himself. Marcus Jackson woke up with a fire in his chest. The art contest was just 2 weeks away, and his drawing was nearly complete. Every line, every shadow on the page felt like a piece of himself reclaimed. At Lincoln High, he carried himself differently now, still quiet, but with a steadiness that hadn't been there before. Kids noticed. Some whispered about his speech at the community center, others about the way he'd stood up to Jake Carter in the cafeteria. Marcus wasn't shadow anymore, at least not to everyone. In art class, Mr. Ruiz pulled Marcus aside, his eyes bright with excitement. "Your piece is something special, Marcus. It's raw, real. The judges are gonna feel it." Marcus ducked his head, a shy smile tugging at his lips. For the first time, he let himself believe he might actually have a shot. Even at home, things felt lighter. Tanya, his mom, had started framing one of Marcus's old sketches to hang in the living room, a small gesture that made Marcus's heart swell. Aaliyah, his little sister, kept sneaking peeks at his contest drawing, declaring it the coolest thing ever. Their support was like armor, shielding Marcus from the doubts that still lingered. But not everything was smooth. Jake Carter hadn't forgotten Marcus's defiance, and his anger was simmering, ready to boil over. One rainy afternoon, Marcus saw another side of Jake he couldn't unsee. After school, he was grabbing books from his locker when he overheard shouting from the gym. Curious, he peeked through the doors. Jake was there, alone with his dad, Coach Carter, a man whose booming voice matched his towering frame. "You call that effort?" Coach Carter barked, tossing a basketball at Jake's chest. "You're embarrassing me out there. You think colleges want a quitter?" Jake's face was tight, his jaw clenched. "I'm trying, Dad," he muttered, but his voice cracked. "Trying's not enough." Coach Carter snapped. "You're my son. You don't get to be average." Marcus slipped away before anyone saw him, his stomach twisting. He'd always seen Jake as untouchable, the golden boy who had it all. But that moment told a different story. Jake wasn't just a bully, he was a kid under pressure, carrying a weight Marcus hadn't expected. It didn't excuse what Jake had done, but it made Marcus wonder, what else was Jake hiding? The next day, Marcus found a new friend in an unlikely place. Lena, the girl from his math class who'd complimented his speech, started sitting with him at lunch. She was bold and funny, with a quick laugh and a habit of saying exactly what she thought. "You're kinda quiet, but I like it," she told Marcus one day, stealing a fry from his tray. "You've got this vibe. Like you're thinking big things." Marcus wasn't used to compliments, but Lena's warmth was easy to lean into. She'd heard about the art contest and was all in, hyping him up. "You're gonna crush it, Marcus. I'm coming to cheer you on, so don't mess up," she teased. Lena also had her own struggles. Over lunch, she told Marcus about her older brother, who'd gotten into trouble and left home. "People judge me for it, like I'm gonna turn out the same," she said, her voice low. "But I'm not him. I'm me." Her words hit Marcus hard. He knew what it was like to feel defined by others' expectations. "You're enough, Lena," he said, echoing the words his mom had told him. Lena grinned, nudging his shoulder. "Same to you, Jackson." Their friendship gave Marcus a new kind of courage. With Lena in his corner, alongside Ms. Harper, Mr. Ruiz, and his family, he felt less alone. But the closer the contest got, the more Jake's bullying escalated, threatening to unravel everything. Jake's attacks became more calculated. One morning, Marcus found his locker covered in sticky notes, each one scrawled with cruel words: loser, freak, shadow. Kids snickered as they passed, and Marcus's face burned. He ripped the notes down, his hands shaking, but the words stuck in his mind. Later that day, Jake cornered Marcus in the hallway, his crew looming behind him. "Heard you're entering some art thing," Jake sneered. "What, you think you're an artist now? Nobody cares about your dumb drawings." Marcus's heart pounded, but he held Jake's gaze. "Maybe not," he said, his voice steady. "But I care. And that's enough. Jake's eyes narrowed, his smirk gone. For a moment, it looked like he might swing. But then Lena appeared, stepping between them. "Back off, Jake," she said, her voice sharp. "You're not as tough as you think." Jake laughed, but it was forced. He muttered something under his breath and walked away, his crew trailing behind. Lena turned to Marcus, her expression softening. "You okay?" Marcus nodded, but inside, he was rattled. Jake wasn't going to stop, and the contest was getting closer. What if Jake ruined it? What if he froze under the pressure? The next week, disaster struck. Marcus had been keeping his contest drawing in the art room, where he could work on it safely. But one afternoon, he walked in to find his canvas torn, the edges ripped, the light bursting from the boy's chest smudged beyond repair. A note was taped to it, "Stay in the shadows." Marcus's knees buckled. He sank to the floor, staring at the ruined piece. Hours of work, pieces of his heart, gone. He didn't need to guess who did it, Jake's handwriting was unmistakable. Tears stung his eyes, but he didn't let them fall. Instead, anger surged through him, hot and fierce. Mr. Ruiz found him there, his face falling as he saw the damage. "Marcus, I'm so sorry," he said. "We'll report this. Whoever did it won't get away with it." But Marcus barely heard him. All he could think was that Jake had won. He'd taken Marcus's voice, just like he always had that night. Marcus sat in his room, the ruined canvas propped against his wall. Tanya knocked softly, sitting beside him. "Talk to me, baby," she said. Marcus's voice was hoarse. "I thought I could do this, Mom. I thought I was stronger. But I'm not." Tanya took his hand, her grip firm. "You are stronger than you know. This drawing? It's not your strength. You are. And nobody can take that from you unless you let them." Her words sank in, slow but steady. Marcus looked at the torn canvas, then at his sketchbook, still filled with ideas. Jake had destroyed one piece, but he couldn't destroy Marcus's will. Not anymore. The next day, Marcus met with Ms. Harper, his jaw set. "I'm not quitting," he told her. "I'm starting over." Ms. Harper's eyes lit up. "That's my Marcus. What's the plan?" Marcus explained his idea, a new drawing, bolder than the first. This one would show two figures, one stepping into the light, the other lingering in the shadows, reaching out but afraid. It was about him and Jake, about the choice to rise above pain. It was riskier, more personal, but Marcus was done playing it safe. Mr. Ruiz helped him get new supplies, and Lena offered to keep watch in the art room to prevent another sabotage. Marcus worked late into the nights, his pencil flying across the canvas. The new piece was raw, emotional, and powerful, capturing not just his own journey but the universal struggle to find courage. As the contest approached, Marcus felt a mix of nerves and determination. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for every kid who'd ever felt invisible, for every voice that had been silenced. Marcus Jackson barely slept the night before the district art contest. His new drawing, finished just hours ago, sat carefully packed in a portfolio case by his door. The image, two figures, one stepping into light, the other reaching from the shadows, was the most honest thing he'd ever created. It wasn't just about him anymore, it was about every kid who'd ever felt trapped, including, in a way, Jake Carter. At breakfast, Tanya noticed the circles under Marcus's eyes. "You nervous, baby?" she asked, sliding a plate of pancakes his way. Marcus nodded, poking at his food. "What if it's not good enough, Mom? What if I freeze up again?" Tanya leaned across the table, her voice steady. "You've already won, Marcus. Not because of some contest, but because you didn't give up. That drawing? It's your heart on that page. And nobody can take that." Aaliyah, his little sister, chimed in, her eyes wide. "It's gonna be awesome, Marcus. You're like a superhero." Marcus managed a small smile. Their words were like a lifeline, pulling him through the fear. Today wasn't just about winning, it was about showing the world, and himself, who he really was. The contest was held at the community center, the same place where Marcus had given his speech weeks ago. The room was transformed, with easels displaying artwork from students across the district. The air buzzed with nervous energy as kids, parents, and judges milled around. Marcus spotted Lena near the entrance, waving him over. "You got this, Jackson," she said, giving him a playful nudge. "Show him what you're made of." Ms. Harper and Mr. Ruiz were there too, offering quiet encouragement. Tanya and Aaliyah sat in the front row, Tanya's eyes shining with pride. But Marcus's stomach dropped when he saw Jake Carter and his crew in the back, smirking as they whispered to each other. Jake's presence felt like a storm cloud, threatening to ruin everything. The contest began with students presenting their work to a panel of judges, including a local artist, a school board member, and Judge Ellis, a kind but stern woman known for her fairness. Each student had 5 minutes to explain their piece. Marcus was one of the last to go, which only made his nerves worse. As he waited, he watched the other presentations, his hands sweaty, his heart racing. When his name was called, Marcus felt like the room tilted. He stood, clutching his portfolio, and walked to the front. Every eye was on him, including Jake's. For a moment, the old fear, the one that whispered shadow, clawed at him. But then he saw Aaliyah's superhero drawing tucked into her hands, Lena's encouraging nod, and his mom's unwavering gaze. He took a deep breath and began. Marcus unzipped his portfolio and lifted his drawing onto the easel. The room went quiet as the image came into view, a black teenager stepping into a beam of light, his face determined, while another figure lingered in the shadows, one hand outstretched, caught between fear and hope. The contrast was striking, the emotion raw. "My name is Marcus Jackson," he started, his voice shaky but growing stronger. "This drawing is called The Choice. It's about what it feels like to be seen, or to feel invisible. For a long time, I let other people tell me who I was. They called me names, made me feel like I didn't belong. But I learned something: we all have a choice. To stay in the shadows or to step into the light. Even when it's hard. Even when it hurts." He paused, his eyes scanning the room. Jake was watching, his smirk gone, his expression unreadable. Marcus kept going. "The second figure, the one in the shadows, he's not just a bully. He's someone who's hurting, too. Someone who's afraid to be seen for who he really is. I think we all carry that fear. But we can choose courage instead." The words poured out, each one a piece of Marcus's heart. He talked about the bullying, the nights he felt worthless, and the strength he'd found through his art, his family, and his friends. He didn't name Jake, but the truth hung heavy in the air. When he finished, the room was silent, the kind of silence that feels alive with meaning. Judge Ellis leaned forward, her eyes soft. "That was powerful, Marcus. Thank you for sharing your story." The other judges nodded, jotting notes. The audience clapped, the sound swelling until it filled the room. Lena whooped, and Aaliyah bounced in her seat. Tanya wiped a tear, her smile wide. But Marcus's eyes went to Jake. For a split second, their gazes locked. Jake's face was pale, his jaw tight, like he'd been struck. Then he looked away, his shoulders hunching. After the presentations, the judges deliberated while everyone mingled. Marcus was putting his drawing away when Jake approached, alone this time, his crew nowhere in sight. Marcus tensed, bracing for a fight. "What was that?" Jake said, his voice low, almost a growl. "You think you can just call me out like that? In front of everyone?" Marcus's heart pounded, but he didn't back down. "I wasn't calling you out, Jake. I was telling my truth. And maybe yours, too." Jake's eyes widened, like Marcus had hit a nerve. "You don't know me," he snapped, but his voice cracked. "You don't know what I deal with." "Then tell me," Marcus said, surprising himself with his calm. "Why do you hate me so much? What did I ever do to you?" For a moment, Jake didn't speak. His hands clenched into fists, his breathing uneven. Then, in a voice so quiet Marcus almost missed it, he said, "You make it look easy." Marcus blinked, confused. "What?" "Being you," Jake muttered, his eyes on the floor. "You don't care what people think. You just keep going. My dad, he's on me all the time. Says I'm not good enough, that I'll never be enough. And you? You're out here drawing, talking, not letting it stop you. It makes me feel weak." The confession hung between them, raw and heavy. Marcus didn't know what to say. He'd spent years seeing Jake as the enemy, but now he saw a kid, just like him, carrying pain he didn't know how to handle. "I don't have it all figured out," Marcus said finally. "I'm scared all the time. But I'm done letting fear win. Maybe you can be, too." Jake didn't respond. He just nodded, almost imperceptibly, and walked away, leaving Marcus stunned. The judges returned with their decision. Marcus's heart raced as Judge Ellis stepped to the microphone. This was a difficult choice, she said. But one piece stood out for its honesty and emotional depth. The winner of this year's district art contest is Marcus Jackson. The room erupted in applause. Lena hugged Marcus, nearly knocking him over. Tanya and Aaliyah rushed to him, tears streaming. Ms. Harper and Mr. Ruiz beamed like proud parents. Marcus felt like he was floating, the weight of years of doubt lifting with every cheer. As he accepted his certificate, Marcus glanced at the back of the room. Jake was still there, watching. He didn't clap, but he didn't sneer either. For the first time, Marcus saw something like respect in his eyes. The days after the art contest felt like a dream for Marcus Jackson. Winning first place wasn't just about the certificate or the small cash prize, it was about standing tall, showing the world, and himself, that he was more than the shadows others tried to cast on him. At Lincoln High, the whispers about shadow had faded, replaced by murmurs of respect. Kids who'd once ignored Marcus now nodded at him in the halls. Lena, his new friend, was his biggest cheerleader, joking that he was basically famous now. At home, Tanya framed Marcus's winning drawing and hung it in the living room, right next to his old sketch. Aaliyah, his little sister, declared it the best art gallery ever. Marcus felt lighter, like the weight of years of pain had finally started to lift. But one thing still nagged at him, Jake Carter. Their confrontation after the contest had left Marcus unsettled. Jake's confession, that he felt weak compared to Marcus, had cracked the image of the untouchable bully. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that their story wasn't finished. A week after the contest, Marcus was walking home from school when he saw Jake sitting alone on a bench near the park. It was strange, Jake was usually surrounded by his crew, all swagger and laughs. But now, he looked small, his shoulders hunched, his eyes fixed on the ground. Marcus's first instinct was to keep walking. Jake had hurt him for years, why should he care? But something stopped him. Maybe it was his mom's words about strength, or Ms. Harper's lessons about empathy. Or maybe it was the memory of Jake's face in the contest room, raw and unguarded. Marcus took a deep breath and approached. "Hey," he said, his voice cautious. Jake's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. "What do you want, Jackson?" Marcus hesitated, then sat on the other end of the bench. "I don't know. Just thought we should talk." Jake scoffed, but it lacked his usual bite. "Talk? After you made me look like a loser in front of everyone?" "I wasn't trying to make you look like anything," Marcus said, his voice steady. "I was telling my story. But I saw you, Jake. At the contest, with your dad. I know it's not easy." Jake's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Marcus thought he'd bolt. But then Jake's shoulders sagged, and he spoke, his voice low. "You don't get it. My dad's been on me since I was a kid. Nothing's ever good enough. Basketball, grades, everything. If I'm not the best, I'm nothing." Marcus listened, the words hitting close to home. He'd spent years feeling like nothing, too. "I used to think that," he said. "Like I had to prove I was worth something. But I was wrong. You don't have to be the best to matter. You just have to be you." Jake didn't respond right away. He stared at the ground, his hands clenched. Finally, he muttered, "I'm sorry. For everything. I didn't know how else to deal with it." The apology was quiet, almost lost in the wind, but it landed heavy. Marcus hadn't expected it, and he wasn't sure how to feel. Part of him wanted to stay angry, Jake's words and fists had left scars. But another part saw a kid, just like him, trying to find his way. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," Marcus said honestly. "But I don't hate you. I just want us both to be better." Jake nodded, his eyes still down. "Yeah. Me too." They sat in silence for a while, not friends, but not enemies either. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. Marcus's win at the contest had a bigger impact than he'd expected. At school, Mr. Ruiz started an art club, inspired by Marcus's work, and kids who'd never picked up a pencil before joined in. Lena convinced Marcus to help lead it, and he found himself mentoring younger students, encouraging them to tell their own stories through art. Ms. Harper organized a school assembly about bullying, inviting Marcus to speak again. This time, he wasn't nervous. He stood in front of the auditorium, his voice clear, and shared his journey, not just the pain, but the hope. "We all have shadows," he said. "But we also have light. It's up to us to choose which one we let shine." After the assembly, a shy freshman approached Marcus, clutching a notebook. "I saw your drawing," she said. "It made me feel like I'm not alone." Marcus smiled, his heart full. He realized his story wasn't just his anymore, it was helping others find their voices, too. Even Jake started to change. He didn't join the art club or become Marcus's friend, but the bullying stopped. Marcus noticed Jake spending less time with his crew and more time alone, like he was figuring things out. One day, Marcus saw him in the gym, practicing free throws long after everyone else had left. Their eyes met, and Jake gave a small nod, not a smile, but an acknowledgement. It was enough. A month later, Marcus was invited back to the community center for a special event. The district was hosting a youth leadership showcase, and Marcus's drawing had been chosen as the centerpiece. The setup was familiar: rows of chairs, a long table for the panel, a courtroom-like atmosphere. Judge Ellis, who judged the art contest, was there, along with other community leaders. Marcus wasn't presenting this time, but he was asked to say a few words about his piece. As he stepped to the podium, the room quieted, just like it had during his first speech. He looked out at the crowd: Tanya, Aaliyah, Lena, Ms. Harper, Mr. Ruiz, and even Jake, sitting in the back. "My drawing is about choosing courage," Marcus said, his voice strong. "But it's also about seeing each other. Not just the surface, but the hurt, the fear, the hope. We all carry both, shadows and light. And when we choose to see the light in ourselves, and in others, we can change everything." The room was silent, every word sinking in. Then the applause started, slow at first, then thunderous. Judge Ellis stood, clapping, her eyes warm. Tanya hugged Aaliyah, both of them beaming. Lena gave Marcus a thumbs up. And Jake? He clapped, too, his face unreadable but his hands steady. As Marcus stepped down, he felt a peace he'd never known. He wasn't just Marcus Jackson anymore. He was a voice, a light, a reminder that no one has to stay in the shadows. Your worth isn't defined by others' words but by the strength you find within yourself. Empathy can heal, even in the hardest moments. Choose your light, and help others find theirs. If Marcus's story inspired you, hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of dreamers and fighters. Share this video with someone who needs to know they're enough. And in the comments, tell us, what's your story? How have you chosen your light? Let's keep this movement going.